afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's Overview of Passport Services webinar. My name is Ailey McCandless, and I serve as the Director for Casework for Senator Menendez. Today, we are excited to hear from Elena Shumas, a representative from the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C., who is joining us alongside some of her colleagues at State. Before we begin, I just want to note that participants will be on mute throughout the presentation. So if you would like to ask a question, please enter it into the chat. We also ask that you avoid using any personal information in your questions, as the State Department will be unable to answer questions regarding specific constituent matters. And with that, let me turn it over to Elena.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elena, and I'm from Passport Services in Department of State. And I'd just really like to extend a special thanks to Senator Menendez and his team for inviting me here to speak with you today and give an overview of Passport Services. I hope that my presentation today will help you through the passport application process and help you be prepared to travel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So here's an overview of what we'll cover today. I do just want to start out by clarifying that the topic of today's presentation is the United States passport. And so what we're going to talk about is reasons why you or your loved ones may need or want a U.S. passport. We'll go over the different passport products produced by the Department of State. We'll cover the differences between passports for adults and minors under the age of 16. Then we'll take a look at how long it takes to get a U.S. passport and how to apply for one. After we cover that information, we are going to look at a wonderful resource, Travel.State.Gov, a one-stop shop for all of your general passport information and travel information needs. We'll be sure to put that link in the chat. I'll show you how Travel.State.Gov can help you be prepared for your trip. Lastly, we'll go over some tips for when you are applying for your passport and how to stay in touch with passport services. And just to reiterate, we won't be able to answer specific questions about specific cases in progress. And again, this is to protect your privacy in a public setting. So you might be asking yourself, why would I need a U.S. passport? There are a lot of reasons. It's never too early to apply for a passport if you think there's international travel in your future, whether you plan to fly, take a cruise, or drive. So there are always the traditional reasons we usually think about for wanting a passport, like international vacation and leisure travel, cruises, and crossing land borders between Canada or Mexico. But there are also ways that having a passport in hand can help you be prepared. For example, in the event you need to travel abroad for an emergency, or just visit a relative or friend who decides to go abroad, if an international business trip comes up, or if you have an opportunity to volunteer in a different country. Additionally, your U.S. passport is also proof of citizenship and identity. You can use your passport for employment eligibility verification when applying for a job, obtaining federal and state benefits, entering federal buildings, and proving your identity or citizenship for voting or virtually any situation. The passport book and passport card are both alternatives to a state-issued real ID. So even if you don't have travel plans yet, it's really important to plan ahead for any potential trips in the future. For example, thinking if you have a landmark birthday or anniversary coming up that you might want to travel internationally for. Now is really the time to get your passport application submitted so that you don't have to worry about that later. I'd also really like to encourage anyone studying abroad or considering studying abroad in the next school year and their families to apply for passports now. And to my parents and relatives on the call, even if you don't plan to visit your student while they're abroad, it's really better to be safe than sorry. Because if your student has an emergency while they're abroad, the last thing you want to be worrying about is how to get a passport for yourself. The same thing goes for anyone who has friends or relatives living abroad either permanently or temporarily. So let's move on to discuss the two types of documents that we produce, passport books and passport cards. Passport books are good for all international trips. Passport cards, on the other hand, are for travel between the US and Canada, Mexico, Bermuda, or the Caribbean by land or sea only. The passport card is not valid for international air travel. Both products, though, are real ID alternatives for domestic air travel. You might see a picture here that you might not necessarily recognize as what you think of when you think of the inside of a passport if you've had one before. This is our next generation passport. It looks and feels different from older versions of passports, so don't be surprised when you receive it. Here's how it's different from the passport you may recognize. It has a laser engraved black and white photo image, a multi-layered plastic data page that sort of feels like a big credit card, and it has a perforated passport number along with some optically variable features on that page. If you have an e-passport and not the next generation passport, don't worry. It's still good for travel as long as it has validity. The e-passport and the next generation passport are both in circulation. And just as a reminder, you should always sign your passport book right away. There are different costs for applying for the two different passport products, the book and the card, and it depends on a variety of factors, such as which product you are selecting, if you are applying for the first time or renewing, and your age. And you can learn more about our fees at Travel.State.Gov. So we've started placing QR code stickers on the back of passport books to give you easy access to important passport and travel information. You can remove the sticker, though we recommend keeping it on so you have quick and easy access to our website. If you scan the code using the camera on your mobile device, it will link you to our website. The QR code is identical on all passport books. It doesn't contain any of your personally identifiable information, and it doesn't change the way that border officials or airlines or anyone else reviews your travel document. We are not currently, however, placing QR stickers on passport cards. So let's talk a little bit more about those differences between adult and children's passports. The age of an applicant impacts how long a passport is valid for. An adult passport is valid for 10 years, whereas passports for kids 15 and under are only valid for 5 years. Passports for applicants ages 16 and older are valid for 10 years. So even if you applied for your passports at the same time, make sure you double check the validity on your children's passports before you travel. Every minor traveling overseas, regardless of their age, must have a valid passport, and there are special application requirements, and those include having both parents and/or guardians provide consent. Again, you can get more information on passports for children at Travel.State.Gov. So let's talk about how to be prepared by taking a look at the current processing times for passports. Our current processing times are 10 to 13 weeks for routine service and 7 to 9 weeks for expedited service, which costs an additional $60. Processing times begin when we receive an application and don't include the mailing times, so it's really important to give yourself plenty of time when planning a trip. The process of applying for a passport starts with gathering the correct application form and supporting documents. Then you take a great photo, and we get this question a lot. Yes, you can smile with a natural smile. And then after that, you'll pay your fees and submit the application. On our website, you can use a tool to find out which passport application form applies to your situation. Then, depending on which form you use, you'll need to gather the appropriate supporting documents. Citizenship evidence like a birth certificate, a naturalization certificate, a previous passport. You'll also need your ID, so a driver's license or a state ID, depending on which form you're using, of course. And furthermore, as appropriate, any additional documentation related to consent or guardianship for minors. When it comes to original documents, don't worry, we do return them. It just may take up to 8 weeks after you receive your new passport for those original documents to be returned. They come separately. As for photos, you must provide one photo with your application. To avoid processing delays, you'll want to make sure that your photo meets all of our requirements, which you can find on Travel.State.Gov. And some passport acceptance facilities will even provide photo services for an additional fee. The next step is to calculate fees, and the best way to do that is on Travel.State.Gov. In a few slides, I will also show you how to find an acceptance facility close to you so that you can submit your application. So you've heard me say it many times. I've been talking a lot about our website, Travel.State.Gov. Let's take a closer look at some of the information you can find on the website, including information about getting your U.S. passport and finding international travel information. So Travel.State.Gov provides lots of helpful information tailored to your unique situation when it comes to applying for a passport. There is a lot of detailed information about what to do if you need a passport for the first time or if you are renewing. There's also information on finding forms and calculating costs. And then you'll also see where that blue arrow is pointing that there will be a link that says find location to apply. That link will direct you to the Passport Acceptance Facility search page. You can use this site to find the nearest acceptance facility where you can submit your U.S. passport application. Acceptance facilities include post offices, clerks of court, public libraries, and other local government offices which accept passport applications on behalf of the U.S. Department of State. You can search for facilities by zip code, state, or city. You can also find facilities which offer on-site photo services. In addition to information about how to apply for your passport, Travel.State.Gov can help you prepare for your trip. If you already have a passport, it should be valid for at least 6 months after you return home and have 2 or more blank pages depending on your destination. Otherwise, some countries may not let you enter. You can learn more about those passport validity requirements for different countries in the Learn About Your Destination section of Travel.State.Gov. You can also learn other information such as whether a tourist visa is required. Also available is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or STEP, which is a free service to allow U.S. citizens and nationals traveling and living abroad to enroll their trip with the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate. There are several benefits of enrolling in STEP. You receive important information from the embassy about safety conditions in your destination country, helping you make informed decisions about your own travel plans. You help the U.S. Embassy contact you in an emergency, whether that's a natural disaster or civil unrest or a family emergency. And it helps family and friends get in touch with you in the event there's an emergency back at home. So here are some tips for you as you are applying for a passport. Please be sure to check your passport expiration date. If it is expiring within 1 year, submit it for renewal whether you have travel or not. Have a valid passport before you make irreversible travel plans. The Department of State cannot reimburse travel expenses, and importantly, passport fees are non-refundable. Use Travel.State.Gov to find international travel information. Use our form filler and online photo information section to submit a good application. And then once you submit your application, you can actually track the progress of your passport application online using the online passport status system. I want to stress that even though summer travel season is just getting started, It's never too early to apply for your passport. If you are thinking of traveling over the fall or winter, please apply now. And remember, apply early for your U.S. passport. Give yourself plenty of time for routine or expedited service and the mailing time. In closing, please plan to stay connected with us through our social media accounts on @Travel.Gov and follow us for the most up-to-date information. We regularly post messages on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So I just want to thank you all very much for joining me in this session this afternoon. And to echo the Senator's words, look before you book. And I will hand it back over to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Elena. At this time, we can take some questions. So if anybody does have a question, please feel free to include that here in the chat, and we will try to address those.
I also want to mention that I am joined by my colleague, Juliana, who is also available to address questions that came up in the chat during the presentation.
Hello, everyone. This is Juliana. And yes, we're happy to answer any questions. We don't have any questions yet in the chat, but we hope to hear from you.
Okay, we have another question here. Applicants often complain that they are unable to get through the phone system. Is there a better time to call?
That's a great question. So what we generally advise is to remember that Monday mornings and days after federal holidays will typically be busier times of the day for our call centers. We recognize that our call centers have been experiencing really high volume lately. What I will say is that we've been putting a lot of effort over the past several weeks into making sure that our call centers have more people and more capacity. So I hope that that will bring a good experience for callers who are needing questions answered. What I'd also like to say is to first check Travel.State.Gov to see if there's any answer to your question that you might be calling the helpline for that you could answer online using the multitude of resources. We have questions and answers and resources for applicants at all stages of the process, whether it's just needing general information about how to get started or using the online system to track the progress of your passport application.
Thank you, Elena. We have a few more questions here. First, can you explain the OPSS again?
Sure, I'll go back to that slide. So the OPSS, or the Online Passport Status System, is a place where you can check the progress of your application once it has been submitted. I will say that it does take a little while for the application to be processed into the system. So you may see different status updates over time. Juliana, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that there are several different points where we provide you a status report of how your application is going, and you can read all about it in the link that I put into the chat for our online status check tool.
Thanks, Juliana.
Thank you. We have another question here. Can customers who qualify for the DS-82 apply online?
We had a limited release of an online passport renewal program. We are currently not accepting applications online at the moment because we are evaluating feedback and reviewing the processes from that limited release. And we'll continue to keep the public and, of course, your congressional staffers up to date with any updates or changes on the ability to renew your passport online.
Great, thank you. Oh, we have another question here. What are the top 3 to 5 mistakes in filing a passport that applicants can pay attention to prevent a delay? So 3 to 5 mistakes that perhaps you see that constituents could be mindful of when they're filing their applications.
Sure, so that's also a great question. And while I have this current slide posted, what I want to draw everyone's attention to is using the form filler and the online photo information. Because what I will say right off the bat is taking a good photo, according to the photo requirements, is typically something that we see as a hang up. We also see just incomplete applications. Be sure that everything is filled out completely and to the best of your knowledge. Also, using Travel.State.Gov, consider just double checking the fees to make sure that your fees are accurate. And if you are applying in person on a DS-11, you can work with the acceptance facility to make sure that all of those fees are covered. Juliana, would you like to add any other common issues?
Yeah, I think you hit most of them. Photos is definitely top of the list. The photo has to be just right for us. A lot of requirements, for instance, no glasses, white backgrounds. And you want to make sure not to forget to sign your application. If you're submitting the DS-11 by mail, make sure you sign that application. If you're, the DS-82 by mail. And if you're doing the DS-11 at an acceptance facility, they'll tell you when to sign it.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for perhaps 1 or 2 more questions. Here, will there be a different phone number available for those who at some point are traveling within 14 days or for those with family emergencies?
Juliana, did you want to jump in? I saw your mic go off.
We do have, so if you are traveling within 14 days, it is the main phone number on our website. Let me see if I can pull it up, how quickly I am with that. But if you do have an emergency, we do have a separate phone number. Again, you actually, in fact, you can also call the same main number to be referred to someone who can really help for those life and death emergencies. We call those folks our duty officers. And we really, really prioritize the travel that's needed for these life or death cases as we define them on our website. So I will, Elena, fill in the rest of the details while I put the phone number on the website in the chat.
Sure. So again, that's one of the reasons why we encourage you, even if you don't envision yourself wanting or needing to travel abroad, if you have someone close to you that is abroad, we encourage you to apply for a passport so that in the terrible event of an emergency, you don't have to spend your time on the phone with us or at an emergency last-minute appointment when you already have 100 other things on your mind. Have your passport in hand already for those types of situations. We know that they can't always be avoided, and so that's why we have these different resources available. And just to add to what Juliana was saying, we do outline on Travel.State.Gov what constitutes a life or death emergency. In a nutshell, it would be a documented situation requiring you to travel within 1 to 3 days.
Okay, I think we have time for 1 more, Elena. Okay.
Yes, of course.
For a renewal for a first-time adult who previously had a child passport, does the original birth certificate need to be sent along with the old passport, or is a copy of the birth certificate sufficient?
So this is one of those complex questions where I would say, even though this person doesn't necessarily have an application in process yet, it starts to veer in a very sort of specific direction. So what I would encourage you to do would be to use Travel.State.Gov to figure out which form and which supporting documents are most appropriate for your situation based on the documents that you have.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you all for joining today's webinar. We hope that you found it informative and helpful. As always, if you have any questions or would like assistance with a federal agency like the Department of State, you can reach our office anytime by heading to our website, menendez.senate.gov, or by calling one of our 2 offices in either Jersey City or Barrington. I would like to thank Elena for her presentation again today, and everybody over at the Department of State for your time. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you again.